Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Seeing Ability podcast, where we're having a conversation about the world of people with disabilities. And that means sometimes we're going to be talking to individuals who are adults or young adults who grew up as that child with a disability. We're going to talk to a lot of parents who either are or have raised kids on this path, and a lot of different people that support them. Sometimes that's going to mean folks in education, folks in nonprofits, folks in healthcare. First of all, I know you have a lot of choices when it comes to your free time. And so we really appreciate you tuning in to the podcast. The title of the podcast, Seeing Ability, was developed because the idea that a lot of times when we first encounter one who has differing abilities, we see their challenges, we see their disability. But if we could look past that and see the person, we would see ability. Kind of like if you take that word disability, take off the first three letters, what are you left with? Ability. So, welcome to the Seeing Ability podcast. And Emily, I'll start with you, where this is one of my nonprofit spotlight episodes. So, I've got a group of people here that kind of know each other through what's known as CCK, the Center for Courageous Kids here in Kentucky. Emily, who does communications for them, welcome. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here.
And I thought I would let you introduce your partners in crime, your fellow guests that you brought here with you today. Who do we have with us?
Yeah, so today we have a past camper family of the Center for Courageous Kids with Heather Reddington Whitlock, a camper mom, and then Zion Reddington, one of our former campers.
Fantastic. Well, Zion, Heather, thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, so Emily, before we get into the fast four, real quickly, you mentioned campers. For those who aren't familiar with CCK, give us the quick elevator pitch on what do you guys do?
Yeah, so at the Center for Courageous Kids, like you said, we're located in Kentucky, but we serve nationwide and internationally. We've served children from 45 different states and 13 other countries. To date, we've served about 42,000 campers, and we opened in 2008. So we're a year-round camping facility designed to serve children with various medical complexities, and we do it all free of charge. So the campers and families who attend camp pay nothing to play and participate, and we are really just focused on making sure that we're a spot where kids can come and be medically provided for, depending on their illness state, but then also grow in confidence, gain independence, and meet their new best friend.
Fantastic. I love it. And I love the way you gave that answer with a smile. I can tell you're just a little passionate about it.
Yeah. Well, I've worked here since just about the doors opened in 2008. I was one of the very first summer staff members. So I have loved it since day one and have gotten to know a lot of our campers and families, just like Heather and Zion here. I was in a different role when they started coming on the program team, and it's super heartfelt for me. So I'm really excited to be able to showcase their story for you on this podcast.
Well, your passion comes through loud and clear. So we'll circle back to CCK, but let's get to know the group that's on the podcast with me today with what I like to call the Fast Four, because we're all just people. So we want to get to know you a little bit. And our friends at Reliable Tech Help are our sponsors of the Fast Four. Remember, if you've got tech needs, reach out to them at 502-797-7399. Question number one, we'll do a fast round robin. What is your favorite food? Ladies first, we'll start with Heather. Favorite food?
Mexican food.
All right, Emily.
It's got to be pizza.
Pizza. Zion.
It's spaghetti for me.
Spaghetti. Okay, fantastic. All right, number two. If we were to look at a playlist, what kind of music would we find? We'll do reverse order. Zion, you first. What's a group we'd find in your song list?
I'd have a little bit of everything, a little country, hip hop, rap, pop, all of it.
Okay, I love it. Heather, how about you?
I'd have to say contemporary Christian music.
Wonderful. Emily?
Oh gosh, that's hard for me. I guess it would have to be songs that were popular when I was like in high school. So it'd be like boy bands, like Backstreet Boys, maybe Spice Girls.
Okay, I like it. Okay, a little nostalgia music. I like it. Okay, so we'll stay with you. Tell us about either a book you're reading now, a movie you've seen recently, or maybe a guilty pleasure streaming show.
Well, I did just recently see the new Beetlejuice, the second Beetlejuice movie, which I really liked. It's a nostalgic movie for me, the first one. And
Yeah.
so I was really excited to see the sequel. I took my mom. So we used to watch that one when I was a kid. So we just saw the
I'm kind of
second one.
hearing a nostalgia theme. I love this. Okay, Heather, how about you? Book, movie, streaming, guilty pleasure.
I would have to say binge watching Netflix like series. So I love Call the Midwife, but just kind of when it comes to having time to rest, I love binge watching movies. So TV
You're
series.
you're a kindred spirit to my lovely spouse. Calling the Midwife is her jam. We cry at every episode, but we love it. All right,
Yes.
thank you. Zion, how about you?
Yeah, so I tend to stream quite a bit of TV shows. I go a little more on the comedy side. Right now I'm currently watching How I Met Your Mother, and that's been really funny.
Awesome, fantastic. Okay, last but not least, if you could be whisked away to a location, maybe a bucket list travel destination, to like tonight, we would snap our fingers. You pack your bags, you leave tomorrow. Where would that be? We'll stay. We'll go in reverse order. Zion, how about you?
Sounds great. It would have to be one of the either South Korea or Japan, one of those. They just seem really fun to be.
Awesome, Heather.
I'd have to say Alaska.
Ooh, good one. And Emily.
Let's see. I have a dream of traveling. I'd love to see New York City all dressed up for Christmas. So I'd love to do that.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you guys for doing that. So, in this world of raising kids that turn into productive young people who have some kind of differing ability, striving for independence is always a pretty big theme. You know, what can you do to help that child become that productive adult? Heather, I thought I would ask you, as the mom on the podcast, what role that played in your thinking. What was that like for your path as a family?
Yeah. So basically, I've adopted two children with different disabilities.
Okay.
Um, uh, One of them is more developmentally and very medically fragile. And then I have an older son who is on the spectrum. And then we adopted Zion at the age of 2, and he has a physical disability. So Zion was born with one finger on each hand and one toe on each foot. And it's called ectrodactyly. And at the age of 6, we chose to amputate. He actually was part of that decision to amputate both feet because he just kept on breaking that little toe. So Zion was very much a part of that decision to amputate both feet. So Zion uses prosthetic legs, but also he uses a wheelchair. So it's kind of his choice.
Mm. And along the path growing up, what things did you guys pursue to help think about his independence as a young adult?
Yeah. So, you know, lots of things. I mean, we kind of make the joke that we cut the cord, at birth, even though he was adopted. That independence is really important. I wanted all of our kids to be able to advocate for themselves to the ability that they could do it. So
Yeah.
basically, with Zion, Zion is a very smart young adult. And so for Zion, it was learning the language of being an amputee, being able to advocate for himself of walking into a prosthetist to get his legs made. What does he want? What does he need? What does he like? I don't wear his prosthetics, so I don't know. Zion had to be the one to be able to advocate for himself. Even a wheelchair, Zion had to be able to say, I like my wheels cambered. I like this. I like this, it can't be mom doing it all the time. And so I think sometimes with that too, it's like the more the better sometimes to support kids, and sometimes children, depending on their disability, that they might need more of a support with a wheelchair, but sometimes kids don't. So allow them to make that choice, and kind of trial and error, allow them to be able to advocate for themselves. So independence was huge. And I think what was something really cool is that Zion was like 5 turning 6 when he first attended Center for Courageous Kids.
Yeah.
And that created, I mean, some parents would never allow their 5 or 6-year-old to go to a camp, spend 3 nights or 4 nights, whatever it was back then, to go away and have this time. And I think for as a parent with different needs of children, respite is really important. And a lot of parents don't realize just the emotional burnout and just the, what, 2 nights of sleep can actually do to benefit parents, And so Center for Courageous Kids really was like the first outlet for Zion to go and be Zion, 5 or 6 year old heading to camp and go experience just the joys of, craziness, fun, swimming, horseback riding, just all this fun stuff. And so that would be, really the first step for me as a parent to say, hey, you know what? Let go. Let your child, attend camp. You can't ask for a better camp because number one, there's a doctor, there's a nurse, there's, nurses, there's, the staff. There's just, if something, is going to go wrong, you want it to go wrong there because they're going to be able to handle it. And so with independence, I would say, you know what, do it. Let your children experience these things. Let your children fail. Let your children, live life and really figure out who they are and who they want to become.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of good stuff there. Some of the things that's stuck for me is I think compared to some parents I talked to, it sounds like early on you were really intentional about getting Zion involved and that they were his choices. And I think sometimes it's easy for parents to kind of get caught up in the fact, almost like it's their life, but it's really the child's life. And so you early on letting him have a voice and be involved, that's something that really stuck out to me with what you said. The other thing, parents in general are bad at this. Most of us are bad at self-care, right? Like we take care of everybody except ourselves. But if you're a parent raising a kid with differing abilities, there's a likelihood that you're going to fall into that pitfall even more so. So your belief in respite, I think, is really, really key. And then you mentioned something about, letting them learn through failure, like we all do. But I think sometimes there's that tendency when your child has extra challenges to swoop in and do things for them and kind of be there instead of letting them learn like we all do through trial and error. So Zion, I wanted to ask you about your earliest memories of camp, because you were there when you were little. Probably some of it is a little fuzzy, but what are your earliest memories of camp and what did you love the most about it?
Yeah, my earliest memories from camp was the one that comes to mind first is their big event where it was I don't really remember the exact name of it, but I think it was called something of the sort of Messy Games, where uh, pretty much it was pretty much a color war with all these different things that were going on, and that was so much fun. I also had kind of found out there because it was a camp during the summertime that I'm not a huge fan of the outside, so I kind of stuck to the indoor kind of extra activities that we did. My main one was woodworking. Loved doing that little session of the day. Always looked forward to it. I would say those two are the earliest memories and the best of those that I can think of.
I love that. So not so much an outdoors guy.
No, no, I never liked fishing or things like that. They made fishing a whole lot of fun over there. I do remember that fishing was enjoyable over there because they kind of had their lake and we were able to do other things on that lake as well. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, although you're not an outdoors person, you are an activity person. So we're going to get to that in a second. But before I do, we're just going to take a real quick break. We'll be right back.
Sounds good.
When you have a kid who is different, all your ducks need to be in a row, especially your money. Cam Howell with Primerica knows the joys and the challenges as he and his wife raise their medically fragile son, Brooks. Cam brings over 13 years of experience to help his clients be protected, have a plan for the future, reduce debt, and connect to resources. Get your financial house in order so you can enjoy every moment with your child. Reach out today at 502-803-5075. And now, back to the show. So Zion, I wanted to ask you about activity. I know kids get involved in lots of different things, and I heard a rumor that you're a bit of an athlete. So tell us when that started and about your passion for athletics.
That started so long ago to the point that I don't even remember. I I was in soccer. My mom, after post amputations, when I really got into a lot of sports, my mom wanted me to be in every single sport imaginable, whether that be running, rock climbing, sled hockey, even going as far as soapbox derby racing, various water sports, and wheelchair basketball, and obviously wheelchair rugby. I have been very successful in quite a bit of those sports. It's been extremely fun to be in. Granted, not all of them I exactly enjoyed, though I would say one of the biggest things, and piping back to independence, one of the biggest things that she did for me was she kept pushing me to be in those sports, even though it wasn't maybe the most enjoyable thing for me at that point. She kept pushing me and pushing me. Uh, she always said, when you turn 13, right? Like when you turn 13, when you become a teenager, that's really when I'll let you have more of a choice on kind of which sports. Because she wanted me to know the intricacies of each sport. She wanted me to make sure that I didn't quit after 1 week, as quite a few kids can do, just quitting after a week and not
Sure.
really knowing their sports. I mean, there's so many different things that can happen there. Like there's one quote, maybe not a quote, but there's one phrase that goes like the Japan's Messi's working in a kitchen or something. It's like they could be something where your talent could be in this. You just didn't really enjoy it for a week. And so I think her pushing me until to make sure that I really either whether I really enjoy these sports or whether I really don't enjoy these sports. And
Yeah.
that was a huge thing for me.
So it sounds like early on you kind of did the sampler. You tried them all, and you learned that key philosophy in life of you weren't allowed to quit just if it got rough.
Yeah, that was it was basically she kept pushing me and I just had to learn to adapt to it. I've ever since then I've always had an ability of being really really good at adapting to situations that I might not have been in before, and that's given me a creative type of mindset where I keep going at it until I find a way that is right for me specifically, kind of custom tailoring every situation and making a solution for me.
So there's so many benefits from sports in general, team activities and things. What did you, if looking back, what do you think are the biggest things you learned from being involved in athletics, just as an athlete, as a person, but also as a person with differing abilities? What do you think it taught you?
I think being in that world gave me a gave me the thought idea that anything I want to do with enough work I can do it. I would say that's such a big thing that it taught me. My first sport that I fell in love with, wheelchair basketball, I started that quite young. I think I was about 7, turning 8, right around that point.
Mhm.
I made the best friend that I could ever have, and he's currently playing wheelchair basketball at a collegiate level, and we're pretty much like brothers at this point now. In fact, I actually just a couple of days ago went over there to celebrate his 21st birthday, and so that was amazing. And but he taught me that really anything that I want to do, I can if I put my mind to it, I absolutely can do it. Because he on I guess on a scale of kind of a disability, he had a little less function than me as his legs don't work and he has spina bifida.
Mhm.
That his the programs he had to do for to make things adaptable, to make things right for him was significantly harder in some areas than it was for me. And just seeing how he does it was such a learning curve for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said that you've tried a lot of different sports, fell in love with wheelchair basketball. You're probably not one to toot your own horn, but you've gone pretty far. Tell us what sports are you involved with now, and at what level have you been doing them in recent times?
Yeah, so I'm still involved in wheelchair basketball. I do that kind of more on the side now. I do very much enjoy it, but I have joined a sport called wheelchair rugby. I currently compete in wheelchair rugby. I've competing in that since I was about a year after I joined basketball, so around 8 to 9, and that has brought me over all around the world. I've been to Denmark, Paris twice. One of those times is just recently for the Paralympics, where my team and myself got silver in the Paralympics, which it was absolutely one of the hardest games, probably the hardest games of all the Paralympic games, and even just games in general for wheelchair rugby. And it's brought me everywhere. It's brought me to a community, to kind of a brotherhood like situation with my team, and it's been absolutely amazing to be around all those people.
And you just say that so modestly. You're a Paralympian.
I am.
That's kind of a big deal. You're not like showing up with your medals and your bling and being all braggy, but we can brag on you. That's pretty cool. What about parents listening who are thinking, "Oh, wheelchair rugby, that sounds dangerous." They got that protective nature kicking in. What would your message be to them for letting kids try adaptive sports that might seem, "Oh my gosh, are they going to be able to do that?"
Yeah, I would say wheelchair rugby, honestly, it's pretty much the only full contact wheelchair sport. Out of the sports, it doesn't get much more dangerous than wheelchair rugby. I will say though that wheelchair rugby was a sport that was made for people with a higher level of a disability, as you have to have at least 3 limbs affected. Depending on the severity, it's very rare that people with only 3 limbs affected get into the sport. It's usually closer to being around 4 limbs affected.
Mhm.
And even with that, we decided that we wanted to be a full contact sport. We wanted to have chairs that look like they come straight out of Mad Max. It's metal all around. It's all aluminum, and it's such it's a sport where anything can happen. I flip people over consistently. Things like that happen. But as a parent putting their child into the sport, I honestly don't know what my mom was thinking.
Maybe that's a good question for Heather. Heather,
Yeah,
was there
yeah.
a little bit of reservation when he started to love this sport?
I guess when you have like a, 8-year-old, 9-year-old that weighs like, maybe 70 pounds and compared to a 40-year-old adult that might weigh 200 pounds, coming at your kid. Yeah, I mean, there were a couple times. I just thought the kid is fast, he's strong. And why not try it? You're a quad amputee. Like, and there's crashing. That's got to be fun. So, yeah,
I can say
but
this. It was not that fun when I was 8 years old.
no.
I say that confidently.
But when you talk about it now, all you can do is smile. I think you kind of enjoy it.
Oh, now I'm the big hitter, so it's way more fun. I'm not the one flipping over. I'm the one flipping people over now. So
Okay. And what do you think? You've seen a lot of athletes doing this and other sports. What do you have any stories or things where you've really seen it benefit them being involved in this type of athletics?
for sure. I mean, there's so many people that I know. I mean, my wheelchair basketball team started with Able Youth, and that had brought in quite a few kids that were significantly younger than me. I was around my teenage years when I kind of met these kids, and seeing them go from really how they were to being a little more boisterous, to being a little more out there, outgoing, not having to rely on their parents more. I personally know a few kids that start off, there's basketball camps in multiple collegiate schools. They tend to hold their own basketball camps, and I've known some of these kids since they were quite young, and they definitely did not have the independence to go to these camps. As when you go to these camps, you have to have your own routines to do normal bodily functions,
Sure.
and these kids definitely needed their parents to help them at first, and through them being in this sport, it has taught them to have a desire to be more independent. I think that's
Mm.
what sport brings. I don't think sports itself, there's really not a way that it brings independence itself. Rather, it brings the desire. It forces you to want to be independent because you want to be around these people more. And the only way you can do that is by being independent, not having to rely on your parents constantly. That's where these camps, such as CCK or these sport camps, that's where they drive you to have motivation. They drive you to want to become independent. They want you to really be out there, to be able to do what you want to do. And so I think that's for me how I've seen sports transform people's lives with disabilities. It causes it's a domino effect really, where one domino falls and then everything else just falls in line because now they made it their goal. And one thing you know about kids, once they make something their goal, they're not letting it go. And so I think that happened to me as well, where once I got a hold of wanting to be independent, wanting to be with my friends constantly, that's where I really started to drive. That's where I really started to become the most independent that I can be.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really interesting distinction that it's not even so much the activity itself, but it's the desire to want to be in that activity and all that goes with it that drives you forward.
For sure. Like shooting a basketball is not going to teach you how to cook by yourself. There's no way shooting a ball through a hoop is going to teach you how to cook. It might make you really, really good at trash ball, but other than
Right.
that, it's not helping you become independent. It definitely is bringing the people around you to almost force you to want to become independent.
Yeah, I love that. That is really great. So, Emily, I wanted to ask a little bit about the work of CCK, and maybe for folks who, again, aren't as familiar with your particular program, you've been there a while. Maybe think back to a story that you can remember of how you saw a camper being there, the experience of being at camp kind of transform a kid year one, and then maybe they wanted to come back for another tour of another summer. How does it really change people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, Heather touched on it earlier as well in regards to that sending Zion early, right? He started as young as you can start at the Center for Courageous Kids. We serve children from the ages of 5 up to 17. And so when a child comes and they get to start early, the benefit of that is that they do get to build this community at CCK around them. It can be a part of their journey and it can be a part of their community. But when they can come multiple summers or multiple years in a row, they can develop a community here as well with our staff and the volunteers that put on the program, as well as getting to know other kids and parents getting to know other parents and guardians. And they look forward to coming back and having their CCK time. And I think that when you start coming young, and I've got the benefit of seeing families just like Heather and Zion's family, starting young and coming back and growing up. We've had campers who have come back and even volunteered and worked at CCK,
Oh, wow.
and give back to the program that, gave to them. But just like Zion's story, you have a kid that comes and maybe experiences something for the first time, and then they add it to that toolbox of resources that motivates them in other arenas of life. We have a camper. She was just recently here this last weekend, and she's getting to the point where she's an oldest camper, but she started coming really young as well. And here at CCK was her first experience getting into a boat, having the confidence to get into our canoes at our lakefront. She's an individual that lives with osteogenesis imperfecta, also known as brittle bone disease.
Right.
So she lives a lot of her life in a wheelchair as well, and has a very fragile body. And so doing physical things can sometimes be scary. And so she tried getting in a boat for the first time here, and now she's she's on her crew team at home. So it's like she competes with her club crew team. And I think is it the coxswain? I don't know how to pronounce that. I've only ever seen it written down, and it doesn't sound like it reads. So she's the one who calls out how they move and where they go and how fast. And so she has a lot of power on that team, and she's a valuable player. And to hear her tell that story is super inspiring. Something that she experienced at CCK first inspired her to do it other places and become really successful. And so I think, speaking to the guardian's perspective as well, something that's really heartfelt for me, but something that's a big impact that CCK offers is for parents to be able to hear a story like the one that they're hearing with our discussion right now, or to see those campers that are older when they come to CCK and they're building their community. They get to experience campers and families that are in a different part of life. They may have a child who's 5 with a brand new diagnosis, and they get to hang out with a family on a family weekend retreat that their child is 15 or 16 and has lived with this diagnosis for 10 years. And having a little bit of a snapshot into the future, being able to tell a little bit about what my child might have to look forward to, or what our family might have to look forward to. And the more positive stories that are out there, and the more things they can look forward to, rather than what sometimes can be some scary conversations that you have with your doctor, or maybe you're preparing for a surgery in the near future or something like that. That can feel really heavy. All things that might be necessary, but having a community of people around you that can be like, this is what I learned, and this is the questions that I was asking, and here's what you should be thinking about, really helps those parents and guardians feel like, I can take a deep breath and enjoy this time as well. And CCK is a place where we want people to enjoy their time.
Yeah, that's a really unique benefit to have those different stages of life, those age groups. Because, like you said, if your child gets involved in adaptive sports, it's wonderful for them. You meet a lot of parents, but you all have 5-year-olds or you all have 7-year-olds. You're not necessarily always hanging out with somebody who's now 16. What you
Right.
just mentioned, I could just see a lot of our listeners thinking, "Oh, I'd love something like that." So, if people want to know more about your organization and learn about what you guys do, first of all, give us your website. Where do they go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find out about us. Our website is courageouskids.org. So you can go there to find out more about us, how to apply if you're interested in being a camper, because we do offer 2 unique programs since we're a year-round program. During the school year, we have family weekend retreats. So the diagnosed child and the entire family can come out and spend a weekend on camp, which Heather and Zion and their family experienced weekend retreats just like that. But then also in the summertime, we have week-long sessions where the diagnosed child comes independently from their family, and they get to experience a week at camp with other children their same age, their same diagnosis state, ability level, all of that. And they really get to experience a traditional camp experience in a medically supervised environment. And Zion got to experience lots of summers like that. So you can find out how to apply for different sessions throughout the year if you're interested in being a camper, even if you're interested in volunteering and helping make our program a reality for every child. You can find out more about that, or even becoming a donor, because like I said, no camper or family is ever charged for the service we provide. And so we do run solely on donations. So you can find out how to become a donor as well. I also suggest people look for us on Facebook and Instagram. That's a great place to keep up with us, just what's going on with our current events. And so you can look for us, the Center for Courageous Kids, on Facebook, and then cck.kentucky, spelled all the way out, on Instagram.
And I would imagine with all those campers and all those stories you mentioned, you have no shortage of great images and some good videos to see
Yeah,
as well.
for sure. Yes, we hope that everyone can see themselves in what we do. We're obviously a big supporter of diversity and inclusion, and so we are a camp that we want to make sure every child can experience the childhood rite of passage that is summer camp.
Yeah, I love it. So give us that website one more time.
It's courageouskids.org.
Very simple. I always love a simple website to remember. That's great. So I feel like we could chat, and I want to hear all kinds of stories from Zion for hours, but we do keep our episodes brief. So as we wrap up, I'm going to do a round robin to each of you. In the interest of time, we'll keep it short. Let's say I'm going to ask you, it's a really oversimplified question, but if you were giving advice to parents or to kids traveling this path, give us two big pieces of advice you would give. We'll start with Emily.
Yeah, I think for parents, I would encourage them to know that CCK is designed for their child to take safe risks. Because just like Zion talked about, and like Heather talked about, being able to fail safely and learn from failure is really important for kids growing up. And so CCK is a place where kids can take very safe risk, and just to say yes more than no for your child, because a lot of times parents will make decisions for their kids, and then their child never gets to decide.
Fantastic. All right. And Heather, how about you? Two big pieces of advice on this path.
Wow. There's a sensitivity for me because I've got, Zion that, has a physical disability. And then I've got the other, realm of a daughter that's developmentally 5. And so obviously, it's a unique circumstance. So if I was going to be general with that, I would say, number one, take care of yourself. Make sure that you have friends that you can talk to, friends that you can cry with, friends that you can laugh with, other similar families that maybe has something, like another child that has a similar disability, and then number two, I would say, again, allow them to fail, allow them to become independent to the best ability that they can become independent. Maybe that even means throwing their trash away. Maybe it means pushing their chair a little farther. Whatever it is, encourage them to truly to be proud of themselves and to be able to, advocate for themselves in the best way that they can.
I love it. Boy, that was pretty good right on the spot. Last but certainly not least, Zion, what would be your two big pieces of advice?
I think my two big pieces of advice kind of fall in with each other. My first piece is find your community. That can be so helpful for both the kids and the parents. The kids will find their community within their friends, and their parents will make friends as well. But I mean, I think there's one big thing that we haven't talked about yet. It's honestly, it's financials. Parents, when they start creating groups, they tend to learn a lot about specific grants that can happen towards sports. And there's also grants that can happen to send kids to camp. There's also programs that do all different types of things. I know specifically for wheelchair sports, wheelchairs are really, really expensive. Personally, my last chair was $13,000, and I had to use a series of grants to be able to afford the chair. My second piece of advice is be patient on finding that community. Definitely don't rush it. Make sure that they're a solid group of people. Make sure that they're people that you want to be around with for a long time, because that community absolutely can be somebody that you're around with a long time. I mean, my personal kind of surrounding was with Able Youth. It's where I first my basketball team, and I've had my friend who's almost like my brother for years on years now. I think like 9-10 years, somewhere around there. I've been really, really good friends with him. And so finding that community, but knowing that it's going to take time, and knowing that it's something that you really want to value. It's something that you really want to make sure that you're not throwing yourself into and ending up having a terrible time.
Absolutely. Well, thank all three of you for being here, sharing your stories about this wonderful organization, about your journeys. I can't thank you enough. And it's not every day that I get to do a Zoom meeting with a Paralympian. So we like being in your spotlight and your stardom here. Thanks, Zion, for being here. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Emily. We are still a little bit of best kept secret. So if you're listening and you enjoyed this episode, don't keep it a secret. Go to our Facebook page and like the post of this episode, follow the podcast, and then share it. Share it with those parent groups, share it with those therapy centers. Maybe you're part of another camp in another city and you want to have them learn about what's going on here with CCK. we'd love you to get the word out. And then lastly, talking about community, recently I published a book that I was working on for about 3 years, interviewing about 100 people, asking them about kind of like this podcast, insights along the journey. And the book is the same name as the podcast, Seeing Ability. So it's on Amazon. Love for you to take a look at it. Love for you to share it with other people. For me, I wrote it as the book that I wish my wife and I had been given 24 years ago. So again, Heather, Zion, Emily, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening. Again, we know you have a lot of choices. We'll see you next episode. Thanks.
Thank you.